Today, we investigate a company exploring for uranium in one of the richest uranium provinces in the world, the Athabasca Basin in Saskatchewan, Canada. Effectively, these guys are looking for an ore body roughly the size of a football field over 1,000 meters below the surface. Haven't found anything yet, but the company believe that historical data from the 1960s and 70s is leading them in the right direction. Plus, they have assembled what can only be described as the uranium dream team when it comes to the board and management. If anyone is going to find uranium, it is these guys. To boot, this firm is strategically located 100 kilometers from two uranium mills and has access to international markets should they be able to pull this silvery grey metal out of the ground. In fact, at the time of release of this podcast, we are mere days away of finding out if the first drill hole was reached at depth and if they found anything. Welcome back to Cocktails and Commodities, the resource podcast where macro analysis meets mining insights. Joining me today is Andrew Vigar, the executive chairman of Terra Uranium. Andrew, how are you today?
Very well, thank you, Shay.
Now, it is fabulous to have you on today, and I'm very excited about the story that's I was about to say unraveling, but it's not really unraveling because it's quite controlled. That's developing. Let's use that word.
That's the word.
Yeah, let's use that word instead. That's developing at Terra. Now, Terra Uranium has got to be one of the most recent success stories on the Australian ASX. I mean, you formed the company less than 2 years ago, and you've already got drill rigs in the ground in the Athabasca region in Canada looking for uranium. Now, this is a remarkable feat, especially for a highly controlled mineral. Tell me, how did this even happen?
Oh, thanks, Shay. Yeah, it's been very quick. I think the 25th of June is our second anniversary, and that was just for registering at the company. It then took us another 6 months, of course, to put the team together and start selecting ground. So that was back in 21, and then we listed 9th of September last year. So that's 22, and we'll be coming up for our first anniversary as a listed company. We targeted the high-grade deposits in the Athabasca Basin because they are the richest and highest-grade deposits in the world. And when we had a look at it after we'd formed our team and put them together, they're all based in Canada. So our key guys, Mike McClelland is our president Canada, and he runs the operation there on the ground. He's born and bred Saskatoon. Troy Basoli, who's on our board, is ex-Cameco as well. Ex-ISO. He ran the Arrow project for them. He's also based in or just outside of Saskatoon, and the rest of the board, Doug, he's a geologist, also ex-mining guy, runs the largest contracting group in Saskatoon. And Dr. Kylie Prendergast is the last member of our board. She's a global explorationist and has had enormous success most of her career with Rio Tinto. They're all geologists, which is unusual, and very, very much focused on success. And when we were looking at it, and we're focused on the Athabasca Basin because not only did it have the biggest and richest deposits in the world, but it also had processing facilities. So it's no good just finding a deposit. You've got to be able to send it somewhere when you're mining. And the permitting for a mill takes around about 10 years, just the permit, let alone building it and everything else, and a lot of money. So you're probably looking at over $1 billion to build a mill. And there were 3 mills in the eastern Athabasca. So the Athabasca is quite a big area. We're in the eastern portion, and there are 3 there. And all the big Western uranium players are there, particularly Cameco, which is the big Canadian group, and Orano, which is the big French group. And of course, the French have the largest nuclear fleet of reactors in the world. They run about 80% of their power from nuclear, which is by far the greatest in the world. Positions them very strongly right in the middle of Europe. They're very happy to sell all their power all over Europe. So the French are way ahead of the rest of us.
You've just rattled off a very impressive pedigree that infiltrates the board and the management level at Terra Uranium. Tell me, how do you find friends like that?
You just have to be around a long time. Like the person I didn't mention who's not on our board at the moment, but Darryl Clark, Dr. Darryl Clark, who was really the guy who brought the idea to me. Darryl was with us at listing, stepped down earlier this year to be Vice President Exploration for ISO Energy. So he felt that was a conflict, which obviously is because they're our neighbours. And Lee Courier, who was with me in another company a while ago, who runs ISO, he decided to step down. But it was really Darryl who brought it forward, and then we put the team together, and it was really focused on excellence. So it was people who not only would like to be able to be successful, but have been successful and really do understand the uranium business. So all our guys are really passionate about uranium. They see it as nuclear as the future of the human race, if you like. It as a baseload power that will supply power to grids all over the world. Not all of it, but 15-20%. It firms the grids, it stabilizes everything for the other renewables, and it's definitely going to be in there in the future. So we've all had basically many years, and as I say, our locally based crew. So we were very focused on that. We believe no matter what business you're in, Shay, whether it's biotech or manufacturing or whatever, you need people who are born and bred it and breathe it and understand it, and you can't go past Saskatoon. I mean, Cameco's still based there. All their top guys are still there. BHP have got a big office in Saskatoon. It's a mining town, and they understand the business, and they are very friendly environment as well, because it's all about money, of course. The number one thing you need for exploration success is dollars, and they have a very good tax regime system there, which encourages exploration, even for companies that are not in production, explorers like us. And our last capital raise, we accessed that system, and for every dollar that we raised, we got an extra 40 cents via the Canadian tax system to put into drilling. And of course, that's good for our shareholders.
In my former life as an equities analyst, I would always encourage any investor to look at the management structure and look at the board and look at their extensive experience, because that would help you tell. That would help you be able to see if a company's exploration chances of success increase the more significant, the more experienced the board is. So if anybody would like to look at what a well-structured management team and board team looks like, I definitely recommend you go stalk Terra Uranium's board management on LinkedIn. Now, I want to shift gears because while I do love a great board, I love an exploration project even more. Now, you've got two key ones out in the Athabasca that you're looking at into Parker Lake and Passfield Lake.
Yep.
Now, I believe Parker Lake is where all of the current excitement is at the moment. There's a rig out there. The rig struck the ground on the 31st of May, and on this podcast will be released on the 22nd of June.
Yep.
We're mere days away from news about what's going to happen with that rig, aren't we?
Yeah, so we're drilling that first hole at Parker, and then our next one is planned for Passfield. So these are basically the first pass that's ever been drilled in both of those projects. It's been quite a journey to get there, but quite fast. I mean, to actually put the team together, get the people on the ground. Our operations manager, Jennifer Burgess, is highly experienced as well in Canada, and working in the Canadian environment. It's obviously very cold in winter and very hot in summer, but particularly in winter when a lot of the work is being done. We're doing a little bit of work now in the summer. It's more expensive in the summer because it's all helicopter supported, which tends to push the costs up. We're drilling our first hole at Parker to try and test the geology and see where the unconformity is, and see whether we're getting the sort of responses in the basement and unconformity that is showing up in the geophysics. The geophysics is showing extremely strong conductors over about 25 kilometres of strike, which is a huge area along the Cable Bay shear zone. So we're just starting to test that structure with the first hole. We hope it'll be successful, but there's no guarantees of success in this business. We're still drilling a hole, so it's yet to be completed. It'll probably be another few days, possibly a week before it's finished. And then, of course, the samples then need to go in for assay, and we need to analyse the core, look for alteration patterns. The geologists, we've got the top geology, our top two geos actually up there on site at the moment. Tom and Steve, they're sitting on the rig in the camp at the moment, seeing what's coming out of the ground. And then the next, when we finish that hole, which is, if you like, a tester hole to see what the basement depth is, there's not been a hole drilled within about 40 kilometres of us there. So we're just testing the system, and then we'll move over to Passfield and we'll do the same thing over there. There was some drilling done there back in the 90s, but it was quite a bit to the south, and we've got a very strong geophysical target at Passfield. It was our first priority target right from day one, because it was showing both geophysical and a bit of geochemistry at surface as well. And we would like to be drilling that one probably towards the end of this month, early next month. But that's really the first pass program. As with all these are very large targets, Shay. So we will take many years to test the whole strike extent of the targets.
So, am I correct in hearing that you're drilling or you're exploring for uranium in an area that hasn't really been explored for uranium before? Is this virgin ground that you're in?
It's a little bit. It was known about in the 70s. It was first identified in the 60s. We're on a thing called the Cable Bay Shear Zone, which is a major structure about 60 kilometres west of the known deposits. It's a little bit deeper in the basin, and really what happened was that the unconformity at that depth was somewhere between 700 and 900 metres depth. And really, when there were shallower targets to be tested, they've obviously been tested first. But there's been a big change recently in the last few years in bringing a mining method called solution mining, which is used for instance, in Kazakhstan, in the shallow roll front style deposits in sandstones. It's used for those types of deposits. This is a mining method where we pump a solution into the ground via a drill hole. We dissolve the uranium and we simply pump the solution out again and reprecipitate the uranium. So it has very, very little impact on the environment. There's no shafts, there's no open cut mines, there's no waste dumps. There's basically a little shed with a pump in it. Not quite, it's a little bit bigger than that, but it's certainly quite small. And the footprint is probably not much bigger than the ore body itself. So we might be talking a couple of football field size, very, very small. And when the mining's finished, you simply cap a couple of wells and replant the trees, and you'd hardly even know anyone had been there. This method has been known about for a little while, and it's been tested or developed recently by Denison, who's another company, a mid-sized company. Have a look at them on the internet. Excellent group of guys, and they've been doing trial work on their Phoenix deposit. If you have a look at some of our recent presentations, you'll see a slide in there about that. In situ recovery, it's called ISR. And they've actually now completed a full field scale trial on their deposit, which is around about 450, 500 metres below surface. And that was a very, very high grade deposit. So that one, I think, was running around 20% uranium. And they proved that with a full scale field trial that they could dissolve the uranium very, very successfully, almost 100% recovery. It was 98 or something like that. And then not only that, then also return the deposit to a stable condition afterwards. So you reverse the process and return it to its natural state. That means that if we wanted to develop our deposits, we now have a route to do it. So that's what's really changed, is that you can now develop deposits at 800-900 metres, because it just means you drill a slightly deeper drill hole. It's not that hard. And interestingly enough, when we were forming our company and we were going around getting early investors, a number of our investors were oil and gas guys. So they're quite used to drilling holes 2 kilometres, 3 kilometres, and proving up gas fields and oil fields and extracting things that way. And they said, look, Andrew, drilling a field at 1,000 metres depth is just not difficult at all. So we'll see a big change in that, Shay. This is a real game changer for the deeper parts of the Athabasca. So just to summarise, these areas were known about, but as I say, not really explored at any great depth, any great detail, because people said, "Oh, if you find it, you won't mine it," but they're wrong.
I'm going to stick to the subject of solution mining for just a minute. I do want to come
Sure.
back to the deposit at Parker in a second, but you've raised an excellent point about the minimal impact on the environment solution
Yes.
mining has. Now, in your most recent presentation, you showed a photo of a gorgeous rocky wilderness backdrop. And the first thing that a lot of people think when they see that photo is, oh, no, you're not going to go stick a big dirty hole there.
Mm.
Solution mining is really about minimizing the impact on the environment. I just want to make sure that listeners are visualizing what you're talking about properly. In this instance, should you be successful and should you move to actively mining uranium, you don't need to create a big dirty hole. You can actually mine through these holes that you're drilling and have almost minimal surface impact. Isn't that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And as I say, Denison have proven this. They have photographs on their website of what their well field looked like. This was a full production scale trial, so it was the first time it's ever been done. They will move now to move that up to scale, and not only does it have minimal impact, because it does have minimal impact. As I say, all you're left with is a few weld heads. If you want to bury those, you can. In fact, there's nothing left at all then. Um, the uh, the capital cost of doing that is obviously a great deal less. So we instead of talking about $1 billion to build a mine, we might be talking of 200-300 million. Massive difference. And also, just the time to bring it into production is a great deal less. So instead of talking 10 years to develop a deposit, we might be talking 2 or 3. So that also is a huge difference. And the reason that it's just quicker is because it's so much less impact on the environment, because you do have to be very careful of the environment. And, our company is very, very conscious of that. We work with the First Nations people. Mike was up talking to them and talking to their chief, who happens to be a woman, by the way. They were very supportive of what we're doing, and like the fact that when we do move to mining, we will have minimal impact. So that was a big thing for them as well, not just the investors, but for the First Nations people. And I should point out that in Canada, we are operating under a treaty. It's called Treaty 10. It's been around for an awfully long time, but it really doesn't change things on the ground all that much. You still deal with the local communities, you involve them, you make sure they're informed. So we've been holding meetings with them, telling them what we're doing at the very, very first stages of exploration.
I want to, again, back to the doubling down on this, because it's not often that you can describe an exploration company as having the environment at in the forefront of what they're doing. And this is actually what Terra Uranium is doing. You have, from the get-go, demonstrated enormous respect for the environment, and as you've
Mm.
described, the native people who oversee the land. But you've also made sure that you want to minimize any impact that you have by, I guess you could say, well, Denison has proved this technology. Your Terra Uranium will be a first mover in actually applying it at a large scale.
No, Denison will be first. They'll put
They'll be
they'll
first.
put theirs into production. But what it does mean is that it's worth exploring for deposits under this slightly deeper depth, which is what the whole purpose of making that as an example is to say, yes, if I hope it's if when we find a deposit, there's a clear route to production, um, and we're still several years away from that. I should point out. We have to make a discovery first, then we have to test it. Then we in the meantime, others will be developing this technology, so it'll be available to pretty much anybody who needs it. But more importantly, we're still within 100 kilometres of 2 mills, because you still produce a concentrate. It still has to be taken to a mill for enrichment and processing into yellowcake, which is what you actually ship out. So we're within 100 kilometres, and we can build a road to truck it. So that makes an enormous difference. We have a clear path to commercialising a discovery.
Yes, actually, you're right. We're having this conversation at a time you haven't even found
We
anything yet.
haven't
It's
even
all
found anything yet.
theoretical at this point. But what I'm hearing is you've got line of sight on production, especially with the 2 mils, just, well, 100 Ks in Australia. That's just around the corner.
It
That's pretty
is.
good for a mine site if you're in Australia. Now, I am coming back to a key point that I want to touch on and the depths that you're working at here. And that is
Yep.
something you use this explanation in the presentation. And I think this is a great visual for people listening, and that is what you're looking for. You're looking for uranium undercover. That is, nothing's
Yep.
visible at the surface. But effectively, what you're looking for is something the size of a football field, 1,000 meters below surface.
That's
That's
true.
remarkable.
It's a pretty small target, and we use geophysics in particular, airborne geophysics, followed up by ground geophysics. And then we've also recently introduced from Australia a type of seismic, a type of passive seismic, which means that you don't use explosives or anything. These are just instruments that are put in the ground. And that was, we were the first ones to use it in the Athabasca. It had been used before in Australia undercover, and it showed very clearly that we were seeing the unconformity. So we could actually map the shape of the unconformity, and that really matters because an ore deposit obviously disrupts the unconformity, and if we can see a disruption in the unconformity, then we can be pretty confident that there's something worth drilling. We trialled that at Passfield. We hadn't done it at Parker, but we have done it at Passfield. So when we put our next hole into Passfield, we'll be testing something that's been also done with it's called ambient noise tomography, to use its or ANT for short. So we've done ANT on that, and we've shown there's an anomaly in the unconformity there. So we're hoping that that's alteration of mineralization, and it's coincident with geophysical responses as well. And also we've been using some helium at Passfield, and helium is a daughter product from the decay of uranium. That's the way helium is formed. So and being a very, very light gas, it will actually dissolve in the water and travel up through the sandstone column, so we can actually detect it at surface. And we detected quite a strong helium anomaly over Passfield. So that one, which will be our next hole, it will be very exciting. We've thrown everything at that one, so we'll hopefully we'll be starting that one early July. And by late July, we'll have that one into the target zone. They take about a month to drill. It's a long way down. It's quite deep drilling, so there are very few rigs, even in the Athabasca, that can drill to that depth. So it's quite a specialised thing, and we're very lucky to have a good contractor on site who can do that.
Andrew, the Terra Uranium story, I've got to admit, it's absolutely incredible. It's very exciting, and it's also extremely forward-looking. We're talking about production before we've even found proof of a deposit, but that's okay. I love the optimism. I hope it rubs off on people listening today. But before we go, this podcast is called Cocktails and Commodities. So let's say you and I are at a conference again sometime in the near future. What cocktail would I be buying you?
Margarita.
Ah, a man of dream. I
That's
should
an
not
easy
have got
one.
so excited about that. Andrew from Terra Uranium, this has been fantastic. I hope everybody listening has enjoyed today's conversation, and you can bet that I am very looking forward to seeing those drill results when they're announced to the market.
Thanks very much, Shay.